Here we are. All the recordings are on. Hi, Stephanie. It's nice to see you. We've been hanging out in the green room, such as it is.
It's awesome to be with you.
So great.
Yes.
Like I said, it's been a while since you and I have chatted, and I'm just really fascinated by my friends and people who I admire, who are really getting up close and personal with helping businesses of all different stripes. And so I thought, oh, why don't I just talk to them and record it and play it back to people? And so, you're I think my 10th guest. So
Awesome.
it's a thing. And so the whole, I don't know what it'll add up to. I have this idea that we need a different, almost like an alternative business school for people who are building businesses with purpose, because you don't learn it in just the standard MBA programs or technical assistance programs or what have you. And so part of me is just curious, like what happens when we put it all together, what all the help that you're giving folks. But let's start out by just talk about who you are, just we're recording for posterity. So give a little bit of background on who you are and how we know each other.
Sure. Well, thank you again for having me this afternoon. I'm Stephanie Swepson-Twitty with Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation. Eagle Market Streets is a 501c3, not for profit, but for community benefit organization. Eagle Market Streets does economic empowerment for communities through real estate development and small business development.
And unpack the name for me, because I always trip over it, Eagle Markets Streets, and it's very significant. So maybe ground us in its meaning.
Thank you. I'm glad to do that. Eagle Market Streets sprang out of a interesting opportunity that came from the after the urban renewal period in history, when in downtown Asheville, an area called Eagle and Market Streets, there were a few buildings remaining in the district that were had become in disarray, that belonged to the community, and the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, the pastor and his congregants became worried that those few last bastions of sacred properties would come under gentrification, and so they sought a way to them and keep them in trust for the community. Right in the center of that was this iconic trust, the YMI Cultural Center. YMI originally stood for Young Men's Institute, which has its own varied and exciting history for those who want to delve into that. But John Grant and his congregants were sitting around his kitchen table, and they said, how do we save these buildings for prosperity and this district for development into something that is of benefit for the community? And they named themselves the Eagle Market Streets Development Corporation. Sought a 501c3 designation, and they were off and running. Partnered with the city of Asheville for funding to develop the properties into what is now the Eagle Marketplace, commercial and residential properties.
So it's really, when I read up on it years ago, it's a story of Black businesses being displaced, right, and gentrification coming in. And I love that the community just rallied around the kitchen table. Good things happen around kitchen tables when you're building businesses and when you're bringing communities back. And before we get into some of the work that you're doing with businesses now, we got off talking about nonprofits, and I will just say this every time and any time I talk to anyone. A not-for-profit is a business structure. It's not a business model. And so, say more about what you were talking about with your colleague. How you see nonprofits fitting into the sort of larger fabric of the businesses we need these days.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Yeah, I certainly we think about not-for-profits and think about that kitchen table analogy or comment we were making there just a moment ago. So when the not-for-profit industry first sprang up in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was very much a kitchen table concept, particularly in communities of color. Communities saw an unmet need, and they would harvest on a front porch or in a kitchen or in somebody's living room, and they would say, here's this thing that we see in our community that we need to take hold of and we need to fix. And inevitably, oftentimes that led to structuring a not-for-profit to arrest that thing or to challenge, to work with that challenge, and to support that not-for-profit. Oftentimes it meant bake sales and fish fries and non-traditional approaches or philanthropic charitable approaches to supporting your organization. What happened over time, Astrid, is that some not-for-profits became prolific. So as we all know, when we start to add to our coffers, someone's always kind of watching to say, that's a lot of change you got in your coffers there. How compliant are you with that change? Because you're asking that from individuals in your community and sometimes from corporate entities. And so are you being responsible as we talk about compliance? And so the IRS, because they gave you that designation, started to say, how compliant are you with that? Well, as we built that, or as they built those compliance measures and standard operating procedures and multiple other things came down the pike, not-for-profits really built out of being charitable themselves into being organizations of small business that were mission-driven organizations. And so with that as a preface for where we are going here, you could no longer operate on just philanthropic and charitable support. You really had to start to think like a business. If you were going to need to be accountable in the way that a business is, then you also had to learn to be profitable in the way that a business is.
Yeah, it's such a common misconception, isn't it? That you can't be profitable or that a nonprofit is not a business. I mean, I've worked for nonprofits or businesses that were chartered as nonprofits that had millions of dollars in revenue, hundreds and hundreds of millions in assets under management, right? And you can be very effective when you're in the business of social change if you can bring sort of a business-minded approach. which you have done in spades. And so talk a little bit about the businesses that you have created in your community, and then let's get into the pivots, because I don't know that anybody pivots like you pivot.
Well,
You're
thank you
the
for that.
mistress of the queen of the pivot.
Sure. So with that, this is again a kind of foundation and premise for discussion. Around 2004, when I entered the work, my previous work was in corporate world, conventional banking, finance, and retail. I came to this work. Well, it kind of found me. I didn't really seek it. But as I came to it, the housing, urban development, the EPA, Department of Transportation, other large federal funders were looking at the not-for-profit industry and at their model, and they were very much saying at that time in North Carolina there were something like 1,500 not-for-profits when I started in the industry, and they were saying, "Whoa, wow, you folk have a disproportionate share of yourselves here." And what we would suggest is that you think about duplication of services. You think about, are there ways that you can collaborate across sectors? And more importantly, how do you start to think about how you can operate yourselves with what Eagle started to coin as blended or diversified income portfolio. And so with that, we heard clearly, Eagle heard clearly that fee-for-service products was allowable, that the IRS was allowing that. And so setting the ratios, I think, is what became the test or the question for us. So now we fast forward to where we're sitting today, Astrid, and everything that we have is a mini profit center. So it has commercial leases that pay for our operations. We have the community benefit partner program, which is a fiscal sponsor program where we take a fee for sponsorship for grants that we sponsor. We also are in the process of building a incubator accelerator that will be both commercial leases and wraparound services for small businesses. We own a coffee co-working space. All of these little mini profit centers are how we manage our operations. We look at grants and philanthropic support much like a for-profit would look at research and development money. So once we have a concept and we've got that concept kind of fleshed out and it's ready to stand up on its legs a little bit, we go to a foundation and say, hey, look, we've got this wonderful program concept and we're ready to test it in the market. We'd like to have you fund us for 24, 36 months with this concept or idea. And we believe that it can be sustainable at the end of that 24, 36 months. And we won't come back to you for the money to continue that program because it'll be able to sustain itself. Now, that's not saying we're not coming back to you for money. We just won't come back for this program. So, that's how we've been operating for the last probably 60 months or greater, and have, taken that, particularly that community benefit partner program. We took it from, our first year out, we raised a whopping $250 in profits, and now we sit at about 0.6 million in assets under management. So
nice. Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's that's what I love about how your entrepreneurial approach to this community wealth building work, right? So, I mean, so many nonprofits never make the pivot to earned income. That's the first pivot anybody should make. Like, you create a nonprofit because you're taking care of some unmet community need, which is probably where that large number in North Carolina comes from in the first place. I don't know a lot about your state, but I have the sense that there are a lot of underserved communities, and so people just take matters into their own hands. And that can be incredibly effective, right? Especially if you approach it from a sort of business mind.
Right.
And then most people never make the first pivot, which is, can you be making earned income? Like, can you be earning some income here? And the thing that most people don't know or don't know well enough is you can actually do a lot under IRS rules. It all comes back to how you framed your purpose originally in your 1023. I just went to and you and I have worked together on the innovation hub that we should talk about more, because that's where you're pivoting. You got to step up to the next level. That it reminds me a lot of a building that we developed here in Portland, Oregon, with the organization that I used to lead, EcoTrust. And I was just at a 35-year anniversary celebration, and just exactly what you said. The founder of EcoTrust said, look, we raised $250 million in grants and donations over 35 years, precisely to underwrite the R&D, the development of what end up being very powerful bioregional financing facilities that have put $5 billion to work for people in place. And so exactly, like, philanthropic support is your R&D money, but then it's the buildings, the bank, the investment fund that is actually generating the impact in the long term. And so talk about the building that you're developing, and then let's talk about some of the things that went bump along the way.
Sure.
Hence the pivot.
And there is no small amount of that. So let's back up. We mentioned a project, the Eagle Marketplace project, which is the first, my first bump, if you will, or test with doing commercial real estate development in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. I partnered with Mountain Housing Opportunities Incorporated, a very well-known housing developer here of 30 plus years. Again, Eagle had been sitting on those properties that the church had invested in and had now turned over. The church had separated from Eagle. Eagle was standing on her own, holding these properties, and in a handshake and a MOU, partnered with Mountain Housing. We were down the road building this $10 million project of 62 units of attainable rental housing, 9,000 square feet of commercial rent and office and retail commercial space, and about 7,000 square feet of community space. Everything's looking like we're just going to be the poster children for how to do urban infill development, the first of its kind in Western North Carolina, in Asheville, North Carolina. And lo and behold, we are also going to be the first using post-tension slab development, because we had the brain idea of maintaining the historic fabric of the buildings that we were holding and putting new construction, dropping it down inside of them. Just close your eyes 2 seconds and just think about that. And so we've got the amazing, there's an amazing product called the Del Cardo building, which was a nightclub that played Al Green. And then we have the wonderful Dr. Collette building that served the first African-American doctor and dentist to ever practice in Asheville, North Carolina. And we go and we drop 62 units of attainable rental housing in behind those buildings. And we use post-tension slab to tie them together. Well, that was a beautiful idea, folks, until it failed. And when it failed through 6 floors that we had already developed and put us in constraint for 3 years. We were in legal constraint for 3 years. But I'm sitting here talking to you is a miracle. And Astrid talks about pivot. That was a pivot from words we can't say on screen. But at any rate, I survived it. We're sitting here in a most beautiful, I'm in the space today. I made a point to be here today because I would be sharing this story with you. Mm-hmm. It gave us the courage. It gave us the ability to be able, both monetarily and otherwise, to do the project that we're doing in McDowell County, which is this Catawba Innovation Market, 60,000 square feet of commercial warehouse space being developed into an incubator accelerator that will house a creative manufacturing hub, a film and creative studio hub, a hospitality and tourism event hub, a organic food retail hub. That project we started in 2021 with the idea that we would have a apparel and manufacturer taking 30,000 square feet space in it, and we were off and running, and the apparel company went bankrupt. So we were like, oh wow.
That's a bit of a pivot. You had your anchor tenant, all the financing was predicated on that format, right? And then they dropped out on a not insubstantial project.
Yep. We go $1.9 million in debt to acquire an asset with the idea that an anchor tenant is going to be there to help us move the project along, and they go bankrupt. But I was close enough to that anchor tenant to be watching and know what was happening. I was also close enough to market trend to know that creative manufacturing was absolutely blowing up in Western North Carolina. Yeah. So that when that happened, we started to hit the ground running, making sure that we could offer that space to creative makers who pre-COVID had been making products in their kitchens and in their bedrooms and off their back porches, and had now gotten to the point that they no longer could do that, and they needed dedicated production space. Mm-hmm. They also needed the wraparound services that Eagle could offer them through Capital for Small Business, through T&A support for small business. And the brilliance, I think, of what we put together is that creative hub is right next to the film hub, is right next to the tourism and event hub so that all those things can work in tandem together. So
that's the vision. And the reality is it's not yet built out. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Because a few things happened along the way, right? Like this little hurricane named Helene came along.
Well, yeah,
in the middle of it. Because why
Helene.
not? Why not? Like here you are trying to build this amazing innovation hub and sort of anchor, economic development in a place that's quite a ways outside of Asheville, right? So
we're about 28 miles outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
And it's sort of a gateway to tourism and ecotourism type activities. But then Hurricane Helene comes along and throws just a small wrench into your plans. Just a small spanner in the works.
Just another pivot, yeah. However, that particular pivot really positioned us for support that we were not expecting, because the community development block grant disaster recovery dollars that are coming to us, about 10 million, would not have been attached to the project. And we submit that on the 25th of this month. And internal review of our or pre-screening of our review has us number one in the queue right now.
Nice. So, nice.
Yeah. So
it's sort of there's a silver lining to Helene, is what you're saying.
Exactly. A couple of silver linings. We were sitting, Astrid, I don't know, you kind of saw an aerial of where we're sitting. You did not get a chance, but you will eventually to actually be on the ground where we are. But there were 5 structures in the immediate area where Helene sat down. And of those 5 structures, all of them sustained damage into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And our little Noah's Ark had about 3/8 inch of silt. It took the Army Corps of Engineers about 8 hours to get us cleaned out so we could become a distribution point for emergency relief for during the recovery. So, we just been absolutely have to use the term blessed as we've been trying to get this project off the ground. But again, 1,000 pivots to try.
Yeah, and there's And one story, and then we'll there's actually a bunch of questions lining up.
Okay.
We'll get to those in a minute. But one story that I remember, after we finally were able to talk, because of course you had lost telephone service and whatnot, and we're of course very worried about what was happening in your neck of the woods, because the woods were very much being inundated by water. And one of my favorite stories was that your warehouse that you're redeveloping had a neighboring building that was touching it, right? And that's a bit of an eyesore. And didn't you say that Helene very elegantly deposited a container, smashed it into that building?
Oh, yes.
So it's basically that's a tear down, and it takes care of your eyesore.
Containers that was sitting across the road, and Helene just brings it over onto our property and smashes it into this little tear down building and doesn't touch us a bit.
No, I love that so much. Out of your own experience with how Eagle Markets is going about delivering its services using a fee-for-service, using a business model from like a revenue-based model inside a nonprofit structure, and then it's very diversified, right, with your real estate activities and now the development of the hub. But you also still work with small businesses in the community. And so can you draw us a line now from how your own experience with having been forced to pivot just a few times over the last 20 years, how that influences your work with small business owners? What do you tell them? Like, I know you're working with a number of women business owners who you're actually looking to bring into the hub. How does your experience help you guide them on when unforeseen things happen to them.
Yeah. So, I start every little session, by saying that the power of the pivot is probably the strongest tool in your toolkit, and that to be risk adverse is not a tool you want to carry around with you. So, you really do want to be able to take some risks that are that you have thought out. The thing that I think oftentimes, particularly for women, I will say, and I'm choosing my words, I know here, but I think that we often don't get the benefit of being able to make those decisions around risk because we haven't had the opportunity to weigh it out. So, if you have looked at something and those opportunities are stronger for making that decision, then I think that taking a risk there's nothing wrong with taking that risk, and there's nothing wrong with pivoting from the traditional to the unknown sometimes. Mm-hmm. So that would be my advice. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. And I sometimes think, like when I think about, you're literally dealing with natural forces, in the case of Helen. But for me, that image that comes to mind is when something external comes at you as a business owner, it comes with a certain energy and direction. And that kind of motion actually allows you to steer the boat of your little business, right? I'm a sailor, so that's why I'm going, right? So you get this headwind blowing, but you can sail the wind. Whereas if you don't have any wind, you're not going anywhere. And so I sometimes feel like the power of the pivot is that it might force you in a way, right, to look in a new direction, but it's creating forward motion. I'm mixing my metaphors, right? But it can feel like this external force is coming in as a threat, or it's coming in like a literal hurricane. But it's also providing you the option the opportunity to actually hold your rudder and steer and use that energy to move in a new direction. And I think like you now have a very different anchor tenant, right? Isn't the
McDowell Chamber of Commerce.
The Chamber of Commerce will now be your anchor tenant,
yes,
which in some ways is actually
the incubator for startup and new business. And we absolutely the incubating new business is a powerful partner to have, because as those accelerating businesses are up and moving out, we need new businesses to move in. Mm-hmm. And eventually we start to be the pipeline for first to the local market and then to the regional market. And eventually, we're creating our own businesses.
Yeah, you have sort of the built-in flywheel. In a way, there's I don't know, Stephanie, if you can see the Q&A box on your screen, but I think in part we're answering the first question. Like if you go up to the top, there's like a little purple bubble with a question mark in it, and it'll show you like a little box of, or it should. If not, but there is the first question is on, I think we sort of partially answered this, like, have you seen any best practices in city or state governments providing support and capacity building to the on-the-ground nonprofits doing the work of small business development and technical assistance? And I think your McDowell Chamber of Commerce and some of the other actors in the county are sort of the living example of it, right? They're moving into your building providing that anchor tenancy, that's a very powerful way to provide support just by your service.
Sure. So I would say yes, that the community colleges and the Chamber of Commerce have been some tremendous partners. Local government has been slow, but bureaucracy is often just that they are just they are slow because of bureaucracy. We'll just say that. Oftentimes, because of so many regs and so many the tape that goes with the money that comes or the regulation that goes with that money is often very challenging. But and then oftentimes when you get out to rural America, the understanding around things like economic planning and development and those types of things, sometimes those things are being it's a knowledge base that's a challenge for you. But your chambers and your colleges are big help for us. Yes.
Yeah, I think, and I know Amy can relate to what's going on, what you're saying, because we see the same here in Oregon and elsewhere, right? Like the rural places, there's a real knowledge gap, and the entrenched interests that are running state government or municipal government, city governments are just not the fastest to catch up, shall we say. But so when you think about like in your travels and at conferences, do you ever come across anyone where you go, wow, like I wish we were X? Like, is there anybody who gets this right, or is sort of like a sort of a best like a some that we should all know about? Are they out there?
So the Fed, the rural federal, they do a conference every year in Virginia. I'm going to butcher the name of the organization, but it's Rural Investment Group that does, and they do a conference in West Virginia every year. They absolutely have some of the best workshops and speakers and conference topics around rural investment that I am aware of. Also, the Opportunity Finance Network conference, I think it's in San Francisco this year. They are starting to have some real good information around, they've always had good information around CDFI support and not-for-profit economic development support, but they're also starting to have some good information around rural development and rural economic development.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I would say the people who attend those conferences, right? So if you went to those conferences, you see people from rural governments maybe, and I think those are the people you want to sort of keep an eye on. So I'm getting interrupted by my very needy young dog who just needs to come in for some reassurance here.
Understood.
I think that's where you find them. I recently met some very interesting people at a conference in Philadelphia, for example, where there was a lot of interest in being way more integrated, which is something we don't see enough of. Like here in Oregon, a longtime observer and participant in the economic development space just wrote this scathing review that the system is working just as intended. It's everybody's building islands, nobody is building bridges.
Exactly.
And so then all these support efforts, you leave the small businesses, whether they're for-profits or non-profits, just leave them hanging, right? Like here's a program, but then the next program, you have no idea where to go next, like for the next bigger loan or the next bigger, more in-depth support.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an interesting observation about, the real estate. It's a little bit, I mean, here in Portland, we have a whole bunch, like the city is a large landowner, right? And they have bought or built mixed use retail in renewal districts, but a lot of them remain empty or are empty again after initial success. And then there's vacancy issues. And so there's all kinds of interesting, like there's sort of a policy vacuum at the moment. I wonder, I mean, some of that, I think in our case here in Portland is driven by the pandemic. Like we just haven't seen the downtown commercial core sort of come back in the same way. But it sounds like, I mean, what are you seeing in Asheville? What are you seeing happening there post Helene in terms of how the city are they being smart about the renewal and the rebuilding, or what do you see happening there or in other places?
I think we're still struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, the marketing to get folk to understand that, we aren't still muddy streets and the buildings with, broken windows and that sort of thing is part of the challenge. The other piece is that folk have just been challenged by other external forces in our country right now, as far as travel is concerned. I think the storm is a component of a larger
Mm-hmm.
that are affecting travel right now.
Well, in terms of, but do you see, yeah, it's interesting, right? Like there's so much opportunity in using real estate to redevelop communities differently. I mean, we have some big projects happening here to sort of reimagine, what used to be very vibrant, thriving Black neighborhoods in Portland that were covered by, highway development and sports center development and whatnot. And that's all being reimagined now with massive new investments. It's so encouraging to see that. And it also requires cities to think quite differently, right? And I don't know, it seems like in the rural part where you live of the state, it seems like there's more openness to get creative, right? And sort of lean into the sort of new economy, the creator economy. I feel like maybe a smaller town like Old Fort, in some ways can be more agile than a bigger city, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I agree. I think we see more inclined for folk to be outdoors. So Catawba Falls, which is a real attraction for Old Fort and McDowell County. Our visitor increase even immediately post Helene was up by 50%.
Mm-hmm.
When Asheville was still struggling. And so I think that there's been a little bit of flip between urban visitation and outdoor visitation. And so that we are developing right now for that market, and in that market, I think is to our advantage 100%.
What kinds of businesses are people building right now? What are you seeing? Like, we were talking about your grandsons getting into, like there's no school for barbers, for example, right? In Western North Carolina, you were saying, and you don't know if your grandsons is thinking about that. Like, what else are you seeing people interested in, like building new businesses?
Right. Well, if we just take Old Fort alone, as we stay there, there's little or no food sources in the town. There's no lodging. short-term lodging in the town. There's no clothing opportunity, shopping. They're mostly small galleries there. The outdoor activity is relegated to trails. If you are a trail enthusiast, or water or hike bike. But once you come off the trail or the waterways or whatever, there aren't any amenities to support that. And so those are the things that we really need, which is why this incubator accelerator is so important to develop right now. Those businesses that would serve that market is important to develop. So yeah.
And do you see the interest from entrepreneurs? Are there people in the community who want to build those businesses?
Absolutely. Yeah, most of them are, still working out of their homes right now,
right.
Or home or adjacent. Yeah.
There's a question about how do you make retail pencil in this environment? Do you see any creative solutions there from community-based organizations?
Sure. I think that, if we can get these hubs to develop these, some of these businesses to the point where they can scale, there are quite a few opportunities for retail to spring up. Again, like I said, first to the local market and then certainly to the regional market as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about in programming the building is basically subsidizing the rent, right? Like there's idea for retail space in the build out plan.
Yep.
And so then that's one way you can very effectively, I mean, in that sense, right? Like Eagle Market Street, you are the community benefit organization that's doing this. And the part of the answer is, can you subsidize the retail space to give new businesses a bit of a leg up?
Yeah. Denver has about 7 small retail spaces in its incubator. So, and then of course, as you are saying there, Eagle has opportunity for that as well.
Yeah. I think there's another question about nonprofits are underfunded and struggling with organizational development. Isn't that the truth?
Always.
Speaking, I mean, I think that goes back to the power of the pivot, right? Like people can be very scared to change what their business is doing. Again, it doesn't matter if it's incorporated as a for-profit or nonprofit. Do you see anybody who is providing effective support for people to sort of do that more internal work of making themselves and their businesses, their organizations more resilient? It used to be 20 years ago when I first started working sort of in the social impact space 25 years ago, there were foundations that literally had things called organizational effectiveness grants. And they were the best thing ever. Like it was unrestricted. When it was basically, oh, you need a strategic plan. Oh, you need to do some communications training. Oh, you need a staff retreat. Oh, you need a sabbatical as an executive director. You could just go to a founder who had previously funded you, and they would have a special pot set aside that they could just give you discretionary grants from. And if you needed more technical help, they actually had a whole stable of consultants that they would pay directly. Right, so they would, and I think you've had some of those services for grant writing, with mixed results. but that sort of idea, right, I think is very powerful.
We've got a couple of funders that we've been fortunate enough to at least 2 foundations raised to mine. One has capacity and stronger organizational grants that we've been able to take advantage of. And then there's another that has just straight up GOS support that we've been able to take advantage of. And those are really have really been beneficial in those
Mm-hmm.
times when we're doing those, as I termed them, R&D opportunities, so that, you know, we're able to keep the lights and the water on while we're trying to stand up an opportunity. So yeah.
Yeah, that general operating support is
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I wish there was a more sort of uniform access to it, you know. I mean, I think you are somebody who has developed sort of long-standing relationships with your local funders. You're able to do these really creative business-minded things that create this leveraged impact in the community, right? Because it's not going to be perpetually grant funded. It has a revenue strategy, etc. And you know, that's not I think the access to that kind of R&D support that enables you to do things can be very, very spotty
Yeah.
across
What
the
I'd
country.
love to do, be able to do, is to take the industry as a whole, though, and figure out ways to, for each, regardless of your sector, for a perfect example of where I'm going with this thought. For instance, health not-for-profits. How do they find streams that can support them alongside philanthropy? I hear very often, well, yeah, that works for you because you do small business, you know. Well, yeah, but, and yes, and but, I'll say it that way. It isn't as simple as that. When I started the Community Benefit Partner Program, you know, it didn't happen overnight. That program's been operating 16 years, and we've been working that, marketing that, building that capacity. And I think they often think that, you know, we just struck a match and it happened overnight. But I'd love an opportunity to think through how we put together something that helps not-for-profits think through that piece of how you get there. So yeah. Yes, Miss Amy. Yes, I want to work with you, Miss Amy.
You should. You guys would love to love each other. We should definitely put you in touch. I think there's a powerful force that wants to emerge here, I think, between the two of you. No, this has been so great.
We're doing a think tank.
Yeah, the think tank. And maybe we'll come to you in Old Fort. We were actually, coincidentally, Amy and I were just sitting with another friend yesterday talking about what it would look like to, you know, if a bunch of women who have a few miles on their tires, as it were, you know, if we all got together and figured out what this offering looks like, you know, that the industry needs in this moment. So
that's a great idea.
So watch out, we're coming. And it's actually, you know, this has been so wonderful, right? Like talking with you about your process, your experience, your process, your pivots, in how you work with the community and the businesses in it. Who are some of your favorite businesses that you've been supporting, and what pivots have they made that you've really liked? I know there was a coffee shop in the mix.
So yeah, I would say my all-time favorite has to be CoThink. CoThink is a African American and Latinx giving circle. They're one of the first fiscally sponsored programs that we worked with and have been with us for the whole 16 years that we've been doing fiscal sponsorship. And we have grown them expeditiously to be a strong program. And they've taught us and we've taught them. And so I really would tout them. Also, I think that I would lift up probably Caleb Owolabi 30/300 because they helped us to develop ourselves quite a bit. As they built they were a strong partner in helping us as they built their company. So yeah, those two stand out.
Yeah, those are great examples. And I guess this might be the final question, Amy. She's not a plant. She's just really awesome. Thanks for coming, Amy. Asking all the questions. What brings you the most hope in your work today?
I think that's a good question. I think that I will be able to complete CBIM in the next 24 to 36 months and take a long awaited trip to Greece.
That part.
I had my succession plan written now for about 4 years, so I have great hopes that it will come to fruition, and you know. Those things are living documents, so I've been honing in so that it will continue to be edited. Yeah. So yeah.
No, like I mean, to paraphrase that a little bit, right? So the hope here is it's tangible, right? Like the Catawba Vale innovation market will actually be alive and fully built out and fully rented out, right? Like fully leased.
Yes.
In 24 to 36 months, and then you will know it because you'll be on your way to a Greek island. Which I love that so much for you.
Yes.
What's the plan for breaking ground and getting going?
So the current timeline is again the full application for CDBG-DR is the 25th, which is right around the corner. When awarded, that would come to us in 2027, which puts us in construction about maybe August, September of 2027.
Nice.
And as hopeful that dominoes would fall and get us a complete build and complete lease up in 2028, early 2029.
Nice.
That's the ideal plan. We know how pivot is. Never given up on the power of the pivot.
No.
With that, I think as I always say, okay, that's it. I'm gonna rest right there for a minute, and inevitably something like Table and Mike, which is our theater production company, comes along, and I'm off and running. So we'll see. But hopefully, I'm running in Greece and not.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see it when you get going on it.
Oh yeah,
so,
you get tickets to Carolina and the ribbon cutting.
No, I definitely want. Well, I definitely want to see it. No, for sure.
You and Amy.
Yeah, it will come out. Well,
Yeah,
and we'll have more things to talk about. But thank you for your time today. This was great.
Thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
No, this was wonderful, and the way you sort of tackled these opportunities and rolled with the punches is truly inspiring. So it's great to know you and get to work with you.
Like yourself. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend, and we'll talk again soon. All right.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.